Hello and welcome to TomBecka.com, where everyone's exceptional, everyone has a story to tell. And I want to thank you all for sharing the stories with me, the email that I'm receiving, the tweets, the comments on Facebook. I want to thank you for sharing this page with a lot of your friends and family and business associates, letting them know that every Sunday there's somebody new and interesting that you can meet here at TomBecka.com. And today the person we're going to meet is a fascinating young lady. She's a beauty queen. She's an animal activist. She loves animals and is very important. She's really into adopting and rescuing animals. She's also into anime and Japanese animation. And she's also suffering from bipolar disorder. Yeah, now, a lot of people suffer from bipolar disorder. A lot of people deal with bipolar disorder, but not a lot of people talk about it. But Kaylee's not afraid to talk about it. And so I started off this conversation by asking her if people were a little bit put off or people thought it was strange that she's so open about her bipolar disorder.
No, actually they're not. A lot of times when I come out on my Facebook statuses and I'll talk about an experience I've had living with bipolar disorder or just talking about not being afraid to reach out for help, people will private message me telling me their story, but then they'll make sure that they write, "Don't tell anyone. Please don't tell anyone. It's just between you and me." And I think it's important that I speak out so that people also won't be afraid to reach out for help as well.
Okay, people that don't know.
Yeah.
What is bipolar disorder? It's a disorder, right? It's not bipolar disease, it's bipolar disorder, right?
Yes, it's a disorder, so it's no different than any other physical disorder. This one's of the mind, so I have a chemical imbalance. I was born this way. There might be some psychological things that happen as a child with my family divorce that might have maybe enhanced some of the thoughts I would get, but for the most part, I have type 2 bipolar disorder, which means that I spent most time in depression, but I could reach mild mania or mid-mania, whereas type 1 bipolar disorder is you can reach full mania and you spend more time in mania versus depression.
Okay, now I think everybody knows what depression is.
Yes.
But mania, what is that?
Well, mania to the full extent would be the ability to stay up for long periods of time, like 3 days in a row, never losing energy. Your thoughts are racing. You're willing to spend lots and lots of money. Just life is sometimes for some bipolar people, mania is like this really happy feeling, and for some, they're just out of control, manic.
Okay. Now, what you're describing, to some extent, though, sounds like, yeah, sometimes I have good days, sometimes I have bad days. How do you distinguish what you have or what a bipolar person has versus somebody that's just going through, everyday good and bad days?
Well, one of the misconceptions is that bipolar is you're going to have one happy day, one good day, or one happy day, one bad day, when really it would be more of like 2 weeks of depression, maybe 3 days of mania. For myself, because I have type 2, for other people, it'll be an entire month of mania, an entire month of depression. And it's an extreme high to a point where you can't even work, you can't focus, you're just so energized and hyper, and it's abnormal. It's abnormal not to be able to not sleep for 3 days and to be able to do some of the things that people can do while in mania.
Like what?
Oh gosh, I know they say a lot of famous artists and musicians had mania, and that's how they were able to create their masterpieces. Demi Lovato's a recent celebrity who has come out with bipolar disorder, type 1, and then Carrie Fisher from Star Wars actually has type 1 bipolar disorder, and if you listen to some of their stories, I myself who has never reached full mania, I can't even understand it.
Okay, so you were mostly depressed.
Yes.
And at what age did you realize this is a problem?
Well, it would have been about my sophomore year in high school we saw a problem. I knew I was depressed. My parents were in denial. They thought I had just puberty, high school problems.
Yeah, but every kid in high school is depressed, right?
Well, yeah. I had taken psychology class, though, and all the symptoms in the book for someone with clinical depression matched up. And I kind of felt like that's a sign, like I know what's wrong with me, because life was so wonderful. I had the leads in plays. I was involved in every fine art extracurricular you could think of. I had great grades. I had a wonderful family. There was no reason for me to feel the way I felt. And that's how I knew that it was definitely something chemically wrong with me to bring me to those low points.
Okay. Now, you mentioned like the great artists tend to have been manic depressive, right? Which, basically bipolar used to be called manic depressive, but now it's called bipolar, right? It's basically the same thing, isn't it?
They would still refer to it as manic depression.
So people that were manic and accomplished great art, music, paintings, whatever it might be, nowadays we just give kids medicine for that sort of thing. I mean, although manic disorder may be hell for the person that's experiencing it, if great art or great accomplishments come out of it, is it really such a bad thing?
It can be really bad because people's inhibitions go down, kind of like drunk driving, where people, a lot of times when you're depressed, they see suicide as a risk, but in mania it can also be a risk, just from being careless. I know that's happened to quite a few people, and I guess, yeah, it sounds like it would be fantastic, but it's really not. It's debilitating. It's a disability. There's a reason for it being. It's hard.
No, yeah, and not to come across as being a jerk or anything, but isn't life hard? I mean, isn't it supposed to? Yeah.
Oh goodness, it's hard to explain it sometimes. The depression is really what was hurting me. And my family, once they came to terms, okay, she has depression, I was being medicated for strictly clinical depression, when we had no idea that there was this other problem, and that's why it wasn't being cured. The depression was getting worse because I wasn't actually on the right medication. The mid-mania we just thought was Kaylee's just this ball of energy. I could go on and on. I could do incredible things that when I look back on it, I don't know if I could do them now. Just especially in the fine arts, the theater, just these incredible things would come out of me that I don't have that anymore.
You say that it's a chemical imbalance. Is it something, this is maybe a really stupid question, is it something that you could grow out of?
Well, I think it's genetic for me. Typically, if it's a chemical thing, it's something along the lines of like multiple sclerosis, where it's just not going to go away. It's something that you're going to have to live with, cope with, find ways to avoid going back into those states. Because even though I'm medicated, I can easily go back into them if I'm not careful about what I surround myself with.
Let's talk about the medication part of it, okay? And I'll tell you a story for me. Years ago, I was just going through a time. I was depressed. So I went to my doctor, my general physician, and I'm talking about it. And I just said, "Hey, man, I'm really depressed." And I said, "Can you prescribe some Prozac?" And he was going to just prescribe it without even doing any real testing. It was like, yeah, okay. And he starts writing out the prescription. As he's writing out the prescription, he's telling me some of the side effects of it. And one of the side effects being that I'd be, I could become impotent. And I thought, well, if I'm depressed now, being impotent sure as hell ain't going to help, you know? So I never took it. But I was amazed at how easy it was to just go and say, I'm really down, can I get some pills? So when you were clinically, diagnosed as being bipolar, what did they do as far as finding the right medication for you?
Well, first off, I had gone to a general physician when I was a sophomore, and she just prescribed the depression pill like it was nothing. I even told her the one I wanted to be on because I'd looked at the side effects of others, and she was totally okay with just writing it. You should always be careful, especially with adolescents, because our minds are changing, to even try and mess with medication. You should really look at therapy first. But eventually I got into therapy, and the therapist was noticing something was wrong, so I saw a true psychiatrist. And literally I just sat in there for 2 hours and discussed different things about my life and my past, and he was able to figure out that I had it. The first medication we tried worked, which does not always happen. My sister's going through a similar process, and it's been 3 years, and they still haven't found the right med for her.
Now, you mentioned therapy. Could it be a situation where, like in your sister's case, for instance, where maybe it's not I mean, there's not like a blood test or anything for this, is there? I mean, there's nothing like that.
No, it'd be nice if there was. It would really solve a lot of the problems. Like, we don't know what her diagnosis is.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, so how do you know that it couldn't, or maybe even you for that matter, couldn't be solved by therapy?
What was
Well, I'm just saying. Okay, like you said, you say that there's no like physical test for it, although it is a chemical imbalance. So, and your sister's not really reacting so well to the medicine. Could it just be that maybe it is therapy that she needs as opposed to pills?
Oh,
You know what I'm saying? In other words, and maybe with you too, why couldn't it just be handled through therapy? I mean, going back to the situation that I was going through, I found that if I started going to the gym, if I started eating a little bit better and getting more sleep, that I wound up feeling a lot better. Okay?
Yes.
So I guess I'll throw that back at you. Why would medication necessarily be the answer?
I'll say there's a difference between mild depression and clinical depression. Everyone at some point in our lives, if you live long enough, is going to experience mild depression. Typically happens like with the passing of a family member or a midlife crisis. And that's where sunlight, exercise, looking for a dog, and going out on dates, that's where that is going to help you. And you can typically get over that on your own without any medication. My sister had gone through a lot of therapy prior, and they're hoping with therapy and with medication they can find it. It's very likely that with the genetics in our family, on my mother's side of the family, mental health problems are pretty prominent. With my situation, therapy didn't do anything because I can't control the thoughts. I can't control the emotions that will overcome me.
Do you you mentioned it's hereditary. Do you worry about maybe having children? Have you thought that you might not have kids because of this, or is it even a concern?
It's really scary.
I mean, 'cause you're pretty neat. You turned out. I mean, you're an accomplished person.
I don't think that as long as you reach out for help and you're willing to take the medicine or willing to listen to a therapist, you can live a normal life. You really can. It's no different than passing on any other type of disorder. And I don't know. I'm so young. I try not to think about kids. I have my dog and my animals.
Okay. You mentioned your dog, and I know that you're big in rescue. The rescue animals and all. I had dated a woman who was bipolar for a while. We dated, and she was very much attached to her dog. Is there a connection between people and their animals and bipolar disorder, or am I just connecting dots that shouldn't be connected?
Funny thing is my dog's actually a prescription from my psychiatrist. He is an emotional support animal, which means that no matter where I live, I can live in an apartment that has a no dog policy, that by law they have to allow that dog into my life. I can also go on an airplane with him in a seat next to me. He brings me love and joy. He's just so happy. I come home and all he wants to do is to please me. He wants to give his whole heart to me, and I just can't be mad at him even when he does horrible things and he cries and the neighbors get mad. Animals have been shown to do a lot for people with depression, with boosting moods of happiness, giving responsibility, getting you out of the house especially.
You mentioned earlier, and we started this whole conversation, about how open you were about your disorder. Where most people, it's like, I'm dealing with this, but don't tell anybody. There's a shame, there's a stigma to it. Why do you think that is? Or at least, why do you think it is with other people and not with you?
I had that fear and that stigma. I didn't tell anyone until my very first Miss America local pageant, which would have been in 2012, where literally my onstage question was about mental health, because I had chosen that as my Miss America platform. And kind of right then and there, I had no choice, and I just opened up and I said it. And I regretted it that night. I was afraid that people would judge me for it. And really, people praised me for it. And that's when I became open, because I felt we need people to talk about this. And I I have that venue to do it now, so I'm going to, and I'm going to change lives, and that's kind of my mission now. Is I was given this for a reason.
Okay, yeah, because you're in the pageant world. You enter beauty pageants and all, and that's how we met. Is that I was a judge at a pageant, and right out of the chute, it's like, yes, and I want to talk about my bipolar. And I was like, well, that's interesting, and that. How do people react when you do that? Because I would think that would also be that people don't know what to say to that, do they?
A lot of people are really excited to hear it because 1 in 4 people have a diagnosable mental illness. Sometimes it's a mild form, like we were talking about with depression, where it can be treated with time, and then there's other cases where it's clinical. And a lot of times those people themselves have an illness, and they go, "You too?" Me? Like, wow, that's crazy. It's so common, and people just don't talk about it. And it really needs to be out there in the open. That's what'll help break that stigma, because we're okay talking about, I have high cholesterol or I have heart disease and stuff, but you have a mental health disorder. It's just so awful. Okay,
now you brought your boyfriend here with you. Okay, you how often do you bring this up, like right away? If you like when you first met, is it like, oh hi, my name's Kaylee. By the way, I'm bipolar. I mean, at what point in time does that come into the conversation?
I met him before I was involved with the Miss America program, so I don't really remember when I told him. I told him because I was concerned for our relationship. I wanted to give him a heads up that I could slip into maybe a possible different state of mind, depending on if medicine changes, life changes around me. And he had actually dated a girl before me that was bipolar and was totally up for the challenge. And
is it a challenge?
It's a challenge for myself.
In other words, okay, look, all women are challenges. Do you think you would be more of a challenge because of your bipolar disorder than any other relationship?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think I've met plenty of women with their own individual, unique traits. I don't.
That's a nice way to put it. Are you running for office? That's a.
I think I'm a pretty good girl all around. I don't think
he's still around. He's still hanging around. So things must be going okay.
Yeah,
things must be going okay.
Yeah.
What about now? Somebody right now that isn't sure. They're listening to this and they're thinking, I don't know if I've just got clinical depression. If I'm just a little moody. If I'm just. What would you suggest that they do? What would be your your suggestions for them?
A really good suggestion is go to your local hospital's website. A lot of them have little quizzes you can do to see if you possibly have a mental illness. And you can also do that. Parents who might be concerned about their child, put in some of the behaviors that your child's exhibiting. And that can give you a good starting point to, if it's saying you have tendencies for this, that you can always book an appointment with that hospital and go ahead and research it on Wikipedia or just on the internet in general, because that's where I found out how things were working in my mind. I saw those traits and I actually was relieved to know that there is a diagnosis, that other people have this, and I felt better having an answer and being able to treat the problem instead of just living with this unknown issue, because we all deserve to have happy lives and you shouldn't be afraid to
Is there
reach
a
out.
desire to feel normal, whatever we perceive normal to be?
No, I don't. I just live my life. I don't.
Yeah.
I think we all have our own individual problems, whether it's...
Well, that's sort of what I'm getting at, I guess, with this. Because I look at it that way, too. I look at, again, the great art that has come by people that were, perhaps now would be heavily sedated, or medicated. I mean, I look at like say, the great writer Stephen King. Okay, Stephen King. I can only imagine him being in school, and when he's doodling knives and guns and horror movies and skulls and all of this
I'd
stuff.
be a little concerned.
Yeah, and nowadays, if a kid does that in school, he's in therapy. Stephen King took it and wrote The Shining and a number of, Carrie and a number of other great, books and movies. So, I mean, I wonder sometimes, and this is just my own personal thing, I wonder sometimes, as long as you're not, of danger of harm to yourself or others, isn't, for lack of a better term here, isn't a little craziness a good thing?
Oh, absolutely. I guess the biggest thing to understand is with a mental health disorder is it's a disorder. It stops you in your tracks from living a functional life. And so that's really the big key is we all have a little crazy in our lives, but that crazy should not stop you from going to school and going to work.
Was that your problem? You would want to stay in bed and not go out and do anything?
I didn't go to my senior year of high school when it got to its worst before we even knew I had bipolar disorder. I didn't go to school for 6 months.
Really?
I actually failed out of my English class and had to take some kind of a baby English class to make sure I could graduate. I remember I didn't even want to graduate. I just really didn't care. And that's where it reaches that point where it's just not a little crazy in your life anymore. Something is wrong. And like I had said earlier, I had a really good life. There was no reason, nothing had triggered this unbelievable depression I would feel.
Okay. And did you try to, self-medicate at this point? In other words, a lot of kids in high school, they're trying pot, or drinking and stuff like that. Were you self-medicating at this time or just staying, kind of holed up in your room?
I just stayed home. I mean, no, I've never been into any illegal things like that. I worked at a vet clinic. I guess that's kind of the thing that kept me going. Even though I wouldn't go to school, I would always go to work because I knew someone had to take care of those animals when the doctors aren't there. And
But don't a lot of people with bipolar self-medicate? In other words, with alcohol or drugs or maybe sex or some other way to try to feel better. They find something out there that gambling, whatever it might be, and in some way try to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different forms of depression that everyone handles it differently. For the most part, though, anyone I've ever talked to who has bipolar disorder, the depressed states were basically didn't even want to go out into the world. They didn't really seek anything to make them happy because they just felt nothing's going to make me happy. So it is a little different from what people might think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk a little bit about. I like the idea here of you speaking out about it and understanding that maybe through people talking about it, understanding that it's nothing to fear, and that it's nothing to fear, nothing to be aware of. I mean, when you tell people, do you notice do they tend to shy away, or I mean, have you lost friends because of this, or do you find that when, as you said, you talked and some people say thank you for sharing, that you're finding just a whole other group of friends that can relate to what you're going through?
I've never had a... goodness, that was a long question.
Yes, it was. I know. I sort of know what I want to say, but I'm not sure even that I put it out the way that I want to say it.
Let me think. I have never lost friends from this. If anything, my friends helped me through this. And sometimes I meet people who are afraid, but then they get to know me a little more and they realize there's nothing really to be afraid of. I'm not going to harm them.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing bad's going to happen. Like I said, there's that stigma, and especially with the media right now, it's even scarier to come out and talk about a mental health disorder because I think that stigma is stronger than it's ever been, and it's really unfortunate that it's even there in the first place.
Why do you think it's stronger now than it's ever been? What do you mean?
Because media glorifies the evil that comes from mental health, the scary side of it, and they don't really seem to talk about reaching out for help.
So like there's a mass shooting somewhere of somebody with a mental disorder. all of a sudden a person like you with bipolar disease or disorder is now put in that same category.
Yeah, a lot of people will think that. And a lot of those people who have those kinds of issues, it's way more than just one diagnosis. A lot of them have oppositional defiant disorder. They have shown signs of other things. They've had certain tendencies in the past. And I mean, it's unfortunate that their friends and family members fail to see these things, or if they do, they just pretend that they don't exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it would be tough because, well, first of all, we do not spend the money on mental health that we need to be spending, I believe. I mean, going back to some of the tragedies of, the Columbine shooting or the Sandy Hook or whatever, or even, Von Mar, any of these massive shootings, they lump it all into, they make it into a gun control argument. And for me, it's an issue of mental health. Because, millions of people have guns and they don't shoot people. It's a mental health issue, but nobody wants to really touch that and address that, do they?
No. I mean, and the other thing is all those, well, I haven't researched all the people that have been a part of those mass shootings, but almost all of them stole the guns from their parents.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue of gun control necessarily. If there wasn't a stigma, then I feel that kids wouldn't be as afraid to reach out. And I know that since a lot of the things have happened, that high schools in particular are looking at getting therapists within the school and people that you can go and talk to. I remember I went and talked to my counselors at school thinking that they were actual counselors when really they only help you find a college. And they advised me to go to the nurse, and the nurse is the one who called my mom and said, you really do need to see a doctor. So I'm really thankful to that nurse, because I don't know what would have happened had she not said that. I knew I was never violent, and I think people with mental health disorders are much more likely to harm themselves than others. I think the cases that we see with mass shootings are extremely rare. And
were you ever a risk to hurt yourself?
Well, when you have depression, that's a common thought is suicide. And I remember having urges, but I guess there's those who go through with it, and then those who have the thoughts because they feel, oh gosh, it'd be great to just be over with. Life is just awful. But then you realize, well, I really want to watch my favorite show next week. I got to find out what happens. And if I kill myself, I'm not going to know. And there's always those kinds of people who they think about it, but then they're like, nah, that's not a good idea. Even though I'm depressed, killing myself's just not worth it. And that was kind of me. So I remember sitting in front of a train once and thinking, gosh, it'd be great for this to all end. And then I thought about my family and my friends, and I thought, well, gosh, that'd be really selfish of me. That'd be awful, and it's not going to do any good. I'd rather just get better. So, is there a good part to being bipolar? I mean, we've been talking about the downside and the depression, negative parts of it. But are there, is there a good side to it? I think so. One of the best things I've learned is empathy that I can feel for people, because I've been that low and I've been that high, and I feel I can relate to so many different people. It's opened my eyes up not only to my own psychology, but people's psychology and how to read people, how to react. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm in my job field that I'm in. I work with individuals with developmental, physical, and mental disabilities. So I can see things now better than I ever could. And it'd be kind of nice if we had therapists who themselves had gone through these problems and didn't just read about it in their book.
You don't think a lot of therapists have the same problems?
Well, I'm sure there's some that do, but a lot of the students I've met who are going into psychology, I wonder, why are you going into psychology? Because you don't understand psychology. I look at their own lives and I'm like, don't you see doing this results in this? And maybe I should just go be a therapist.
Have you thought about that?
Oh, I don't like math and science enough. That's the problem. It's the calculus that scares me. Oh, man.
You're also into you're into anime, which for people that don't know, that is Japanese cartoons, right?
Yep, Japanese animation. Very different from your average American cartoon, especially since they're more like a soap opera in a way that these characters are very, very developed, and there's a flow to the episodes. You can't just watch, like with SpongeBob, you can watch episode 89 of SpongeBob and episode 1 and still understand what's going on, where there's these elaborate stories that go on in anime. And I've been in love with anime ever since I would have been, 6 years old. And
how does I understand how a 6-year-old gets involved with SpongeBob SquarePants. How does a 6-year-old get involved with anime? Were your parents into it? Or is there...
Well, my dad's a big D&D nerd, and I remember when the Commodore came out, he drove through a snowstorm to Sioux Falls to go get one. So I grew up with a father who, he liked Magic the Gathering and everything. But this wonderful thing happened in 1998 called Pokemon. And I would have been like 6 or 7 during the time that happened. And I remember getting Pokemon cards. And my dad was getting some Pokemon cards in the mail, and I could not read them because they were in Japanese. And they were new, because Japan was getting them before America. So I thought it was so cool. And then I'd be watching Pokemon on TV, and my dad would order in Japanese videos of it with English subtitles. So I always knew what was going to happen before all the American kids did, because I got to watch it, and I got used to watching subtitles, and I just branched out. Japanese anime really started to boom in the late 90s, and then it had a big boom in the early 2000s, and I was just in that prime age group for that love to develop.
I've been to an anime conference, and it's amazing, because it's one of these things that, if you're not into it, you have no idea how big this is. Thousands and thousands of people show up all dressed up in different characters and stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. San Diego Comic-Con. Oh, gosh. What is the attendance there is...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh, 50,000, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that San Diego Comic Con, I know is multinational. The people that show up for that, and you dress up. Do you dress up as a character?
Yeah, actually, that's how I met my boyfriend. So we were talking about him earlier. We met at an anime convention here in Omaha, Nebraska, called Nebrascon, and I was dressed as a character that he recognized, and so we instantly knew that we both liked this specific anime show, and. Yeah, I've dressed as a couple of different characters. I tend to pick ones that already have red hair. That way I don't have to wear a wig. Because it gets really hot and really stinky at anime conventions. And wearing a wig, I just get really agitated and really random. But
can you make up your own character if you wanted to? Or do they all pretty much be somebody else?
I guess you could make up your own character, but almost all the time it's a recognizable character.
Is there a connection or correlation between you going through, being bipolar and then wanting to escape being somebody else?
I actually thought about that a lot as a kid because I was so involved in theater, and I found that I was so good at theater because I felt better escaping into a different character. I don't necessarily think that anime and cosplay extends to that for me.
Cosplay.
Oh, cosplay, that's the art of dressing up as characters, whether it's from comic books, video games, or anime. Costume playing. Cosplay, I think, is actually a Japanese term. But no, when you dress up as a character, typically it's to show support of a show that you like, and I always dressed as characters that I felt a connection to or wanted to be like, maybe. But I never felt I was escaping. But I know for a lot of people that it definitely does that. But that's no different than fantasy football or, when someone goes and does a lyrical dance, escaping to a different realm. So I don't think that being bipolar really has made that transition. We all want to escape reality. That's why we go to the movies and go on vacations and stuff. I am now, and you're going to hate me for this. I'm going to show the stigma that I have with people with anime. You tend, that you're nerds, that maybe that you're misfits and you don't quite fit into society. Is that appropriate? Am I completely off base? Or is anime just like you said? You mentioned like a fantasy football. It's just it's your hobby. It's what you're into. As somebody else might be into, music, dance, or cooking. I would say it's no different than any other hobby, honestly. When I first met my boyfriend, his action figure collection astounded me. But then I realized I've gone to a lot of other guys' house who have model cars, or they have an entire room dedicated to Nebraska football, and we all have that one little thing that we all really, really like, that we spend our money on. And a lot of people in the anime community actually are inspired to think outside the box, in my opinion, because we grow up watching these cartoons from a totally different show, and watching the culture within those shows. You learn about Japanese culture or Chinese or Korean, wherever the anime is being placed, and you just want to go on and learn more. So I wouldn't say that we're misfits. I think that we're just...
It's just your hobby.
It's just our hobby. We're no different. A lot of people, when they find out I do pageants and then they find out I love anime, they think it's just this odd combination, when really they do pageants and, they do broom ball at the university,
Mm-hmm.
It's...
Just whatever, yeah, whatever happens to speak to you, and whatever makes you. Now you mentioned one time. By the way, when you take your girlfriend to your house and she sees all your action figures and she likes it, that's when you know she's a keeper, right? Yeah, that's like, yeah, all right, hey. Yeah,
I was really jealous. I actually knew a bunch of the actual figure arts, and I would tell him the line, and I knew a bunch of stuff. Most of those got packed away, though, because we don't have room for them. And
okay, now let's talk about, because you're also into beauty pageants. Okay, you'd mentioned to me that the beauty pageants have helped with you're dealing with your bipolar disorder, right? I mean,
yes.
that actually helps you to feel more confident about yourself, express yourself. How does being in beauty pageants help you as a person?
Well, I'm not involved in just any old beauty pageant. I got to say that first. It's not Toddlers and Tiaras. These aren't pageants where you literally get up on stage, twirl around, and win a big crown and money. Actually, with the Miss America organization, you're earning scholarship funds, and one of the basis is you have a platform. The national platform is the Children's Miracle Network, but you get to have your own personal one. And I chose Don't Be Sidelined Mental Health Awareness, which partnered with Husker Sports through the Kim Foundation. And then I switched, and for the next 2 years, I'm doing a platform called Positive Futures, Adopt a Shelter Pet. Pageantry has given me more confidence than any other activity or organization could give a young woman in the 2 years that I've been involved in it. The ability to walk into a room and take center stage and really, really inspire and show people, wow, she went up and she did something great. I want to do that too. To the eyes of a child, they don't know if you could be Miss Kool-Aid Days and they still think you're Miss America. Like they have no idea. You're wearing a crown, you're royalty, and going out in the community and volunteering and having them see you, this princess, that makes them want to volunteer even more and inspires them, because I got involved because I was inspired by a young woman.
So how did you do the first one then? I mean, you say you got inspired by a young woman. What made you decide to actually go out there and do it? Did somebody have to prod you, or did you just finally...
Well, my mom was a little excited because I had finished theater and show choir, and she didn't have anything to sew for. She's a seamstress, so she didn't have anything to sparkle. So she definitely pushed me a little bit. I did not know how to walk in heels or anything like that. I was a big nerd. I played Yu-Gi-Oh cards and stuff like that. I got involved because my junior year English teacher told me about her younger sister, that had been Miss South Dakota. And I talked with her, Miss South Dakota, 2004, and found out all that she had done. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. I can use my theater background. I can use my love for speaking. I can actually maybe talk about my mental health and make a difference. And that's how I got involved. my very, very, very first pageant was literally a flyer in the mail that came and said, you could be Miss Iowa Teen USA. I thought, that sounds great. So I did that pageant. And,
that just sounds like a really cheesy episode of some bad 70s sitcom. It's like, hey, Jan Brady hey, you could be Miss Iowa,
Well, I've always wanted to be a Japanese animation voice actor, so anyway, as far as talking into a mic and all right. So I did that pageant and I had a lot of fun, and then I did the America's National Teenager Scholarship Organization, and I was Miss Iowa National Teenager in that program. Did Iowa USA for a few more years, and then I was finally ready to branch into the Miss America system, which is like, it's like the Super Bowl of pageants. That is the big one. And I finally had gained that courage to do it. I came here and to live in Lincoln, Nebraska. I competed my very first pageant, which was the Miss Kearney pageant, and I won it. And I remember I was pretty terrified. And if you ask any of the girls from my first year at state, I cried every single day. I actually had an anxiety attack. I felt bad. Like, here I am, this platform on bipolar disorder and mental health, and I'm not being a very good example of it. I had stayed away from the Miss America program, one, because I was afraid of the platform part, but more importantly, I was afraid of the talent portion. I had never had to do that in the previous pageants, and in high school, I had loved to sing, and then I was put down by a teacher and told I didn't have any singing talent, and really from then on, I didn't want to sing anymore. So I hadn't sang in 4 years when I did that very first local, and then when I went and did Miss Nebraska, the state pageant, I cried, and when I finally performed my song the very first night, Miss America, Teresa Scanlon, 2011, had came backstage and she said it sounded beautiful, and I got a little more confidence. I felt pretty good, but then the next local pageant, I cried again. So.
Okay, you say something which just made this pop in my head. Everybody has bad days.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, everybody has bad days when you just want to cuss and yell and throw something against the wall. Okay. Now, people know if you're making your platform on mental health, when you have a day like that, do you think and decide, oh man, I can't cuss and yell and throw stuff against the wall because then people will think I'm going crazy? You know what I mean? In other words, is there some sort of almost a responsibility now to be as normal as possible because you are talking about mental health issues?
Yeah, honestly, I felt that way, especially when I was wearing my crown and my banner, and when I was at the state pageant. But I realized, I can't hide it because I have bipolar disorder, and I can't make it out like it's this perfect world that it doesn't affect me at all, because it does. And I've gotten closer to the girls, and I think now that they're comfortable being around me, that I'm not going to do anything crazy. I might cry, but I'm not going to do anything bad.
What do you want to wrap this up? What do you want people to know about people like you?
When you find someone that is showing signs of a mental health disorder, don't throw them aside. Don't ignore them and think they're going to get better. Help them. Please help them. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for my high school friends and pushing me to go talk to the nurse, and them talking to my parents and really working through this. This is when someone's at their most vulnerable state, so help them, be their hero, please, please, please. And if you yourself have a mental health disorder, know that you're normal. It's okay. We all take medicine for something, that you're gonna be all right. You can live a normal functioning life. I live a fantastic life. I forget I even have bipolar disorder. Honestly, I often don't remember till I take my medicine at the end of the night. I'm like, oh yeah, I do have that. So just don't be afraid to reach out for help, and don't be afraid to be the help for someone.
Thank you, Kaylee, for being so open and honest and dealing with your life, living with bipolar disorder. If you know somebody that is dealing with a mental health issue, do what Kaylee suggests, won't you please? Won't you be supportive? Won't you help them seek out the care that they need to live a normal and better life? Thanks again for joining us. Every Sunday we bring in somebody new, but we're here for you 24/7 with everyday people with interesting stories. Yeah, people that you might be able to relate to, or people you wouldn't imagine meeting in the wildest dreams. It's all right here on TomBecka.com.